Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Utica. I'm Roz Kearney, a member of the board. Whether you are visiting for the first time or have been a member for many years, you are welcome here. Whatever faiths you have known, if any, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. We are invited to bring our whole selves to this worship service, our doubts as well as our convictions, the pain and joy we have known, our longing for connection and understanding. Every part of you is welcome here. And now we have some announcements. Just a sec. There's an update from the Stewardship Task Force. The pledge drive is well underway. We've now received pledges from 30 people, totaling more than 55,000, which represents more than 60% of our goal of 91,150. Please pledge as generously as you can. Secondly, UUs and your friends are invited for a walk through FT Proctor Park next Saturday at 1, guided by Phil Bean, who's the executive director of the CNY Conservancy. He'll highlight planned improvements to create a peace garden to honor all those who have come to Utica seeking peace. Please see the weekly newsletter or contact Carol Gable for more information. In addition, it's my birthday. And the next hymn is hymn number 1003. I can't remember the name of it, but go ahead. I wonder, where do we come from? Who are we and where are we going?
Thank you. How beautiful. Let us be here together as a beloved community this morning. You know, as a progressive faith tradition, we draw on many sources. However, because we do, sometimes we tend to stay on the surface of things. And so this morning's worship invites you to journey and plumb the depths of faith development and to have a time of reflection, not only on your own journey, but also upon the journey of this congregation. And I'm hoping that it will tend to rock your boat a little bit as we all dive a little deeper. Welcome to worship. We call upon the warmth of this community. You are all a good gift, and the warmth of this season as we come out of winter. Our chalice lighting this morning, of course, is by one of my favorites, Mary Oliver, from her book Devotions. This morning, the redbird's eggs hatched and already the chicks are chirping for food. They don't know where it's coming from. They just keep shouting, more, more. As to anything else, they haven't a single thought. Their eyes haven't opened. They know nothing about the sky that's waiting or the thousands and millions of trees. They don't even know that they have wings. And just like that, like a simple neighborhood event, a miracle is taking place. May this day and this chalice help us to illuminate the path forward that we are on as we continue to grow well into the last stages of our life. Come, let us be together this morning.
Hi everyone, welcome to Together Time. Our story today is called Something to Squawk About, and it's by Reverend Lori Staubitz. People in towns and cities are raising small flocks of chickens so they can have fresh eggs. The best part is that the chickens have a better life. This way, they don't have to spend their whole time in a tiny indoor factory cage. They get to be real chickens who scratch the earth for bugs and worms, who flap and squawk and strut around in the sunshine and cozy up together in a roost at night. Have you ever counted how many different kinds of chickens there really are? Dark black ones, shiny rusted colored ones, black and white speckled and multicolored chickens. Some have fancy names like Rhode Island Reds, Dominique, and Ancona. They come in all kinds of sizes and shapes. Even their eggs can be different colors. Have you ever seen a green egg and a brown one? Cracked open, they look pretty much the same. It's a beautiful sight when all these different kinds and colors come together. What is most amazing is even though these chicken folks are very different, they all get along. So you might think these chickens were really welcoming to others. But that is not the case. In fact, if you're a new chicken, no one will let you near the feeder to eat. The aggressive chickens will peck your head and try to drive you away. All this to let you know that you do not belong. Chickens are not known to be especially clever, so to introduce new chickens, you can play a trick on your flock. Late at night, when the flock is roosting, all snuggled up together asleep, new chickens can be brought into the coop and cozy up to the others. The next morning, when they all awake, no one realizes new folks have joined the flock. They behave as though they have always been together and everyone belongs. We are not chickens. But sometimes we have trouble inviting newcomers or welcoming new ideas and ways of being. Whether it be a new neighbor, the new kid in class, or leaving behind old ways of doing things to try something new, we often struggle with change because we are fearful or resistant. We certainly struggle to bring those who look or act different into our flocks. Sometimes we make the mistake of believing that everyone is the same. But even chickens' eggs, which may look all alike on the inside, can have a wide range of tastes or flavors. People are like that too. So how do we welcome those who might truly be different? How do we try a new way of getting along with others? Perhaps we can play a trick on ourselves. What if we came to be more like the chickens in the night? That way, someone new could come into our congregation and we would cozy up to them like they've been with us all along. Now, wouldn't that give us all something to squawk about?
Lori asked me to reflect a bit on my entrance into the Unitarian Church. Like many of you, I was raised in the Catholic Church, Religion was fraught with a fair amount of family conflict from the start, as my Baptist mother converted to Catholicism when she married my Catholic father. Her family never really forgave her for it. As a child, the Catholic tradition was very important to me. By junior high, I had become perplexed about some of the central stories. For example, given that I was the oldest of 11 and that my mother was an obstetrician, the story of the virgin birth began to seem preposterous. However, by high school, I came to see many of the teachings as anti-feminist, anti-sex, anti-human, and I became increasingly angry. When my mother died when I was 19, I concluded there was no God. I left the church, but 20 years later, after the birth of my 2 children, I became interested in the Unitarian Church. This was partly because of proximity. There was a UU church right next to my office. I investigated and I was intrigued. When my older daughter was 10, she came home from school and said, "Mommy, everybody is either a Christian or a Jew. I want to be something." And I said, "You can be a Unitarian." The church had a phenomenal music director. My daughter had a precocious voice and got the lead in all of the musicals. It was a wonderful experience. I found the Unitarian Church to be not anti, but pro. I found the humanism that I was looking for.
Thank you so much, Roz. This really does help launch us into our topic today. We live in an age of self-awareness. Parenting magazines. It seems like that's been going on for quite some time. But all kinds of self-help books, science, new theories. We have access to developmental learning. And things change. Those that started out with Dr. Spock are not necessarily reading that today. So we do know that things evolve. But what we don't often realize is that there are elements of development for faith as well. There was a book written by James Fowler entitled Stages of Faith Development. And his theories, they're grounded in Piaget's theories of moral development and also Lawrence Kohlberg and Carol Gilligan on developmental theory. So, I wanted to just put that out there. We're not going to work too much on theories today, but I did want to let you know that, this work has been built and grounded in science and psychology. And so it's a real thing, faith development. But I think first we have to kind of clear a ground for our launching into this by understanding what we mean by faith. Faith doesn't necessarily imply religion. Some of you may have discovered that already. Faith is a way of kind of leaning into and making sense of life. And it's more of a verb than it is a noun. To exercise faith is to have some measure of trust and certainty. And this certainly takes a leap of faith, especially in these times. These times are uncertain, and in our ability to transcend that in spite of it really is at the heart of faith development. But faith is actually deeper than personal religious conviction. It is a person's way of responding to ultimate value and to power, to the ways that it is understood and translated through the culmination of tradition. Faith, therefore, involves vision. And it is intended to not stay stuck. Faith is something that is intended to evolve. And in fact, and I loved that Roz said that there was a moment in young adulthood where she lost her faith. Well, that is actually something that we all need to do, is lose faith occasionally, because that's how we grow forward. Stages of faith that we inhabit have an effect upon our personal development, upon our family development, and indeed our interaction with others and our world community. And we can see how faith has played out even in politics in this country. And stages of faith development certainly have played a part. But before we even go further, I want to just say that developmental theories, no matter what they are, have their drawbacks. This linear progression idea is not necessarily always true. And so I want to say that only you know where you are in your journey. Only you know the depths of your faith. Only you know your next steps. And so today is a time to invite us personally to examine that, but also as a congregation. You know, like, what are we? Where are we? And where are we going? And ground that in some of what we're going to learn and talk about this morning. Faith starts in the beginning of life in utero, and it starts to progress through early childhood development as trust is forged, that we come into the world and we have some sense that we belong. Hence the chicken story, because not everybody has an experience of welcoming and trust. But that does lay a very solid foundation for faith development. And so that's why we work to create that kind of environment for one another. So one adult reflection on their childhood account and how it relates to the foundations of their faith comes from Tamara. And she said that she would sit in a wooden chair at a long table in Sunday school class, and stories were told about a man who loves everyone. And the picture of this man in white flowing robes, smiling, is holding a little lamb, and there are children all around. The teacher invites everyone to sing "Jesus Loves Me." There is graham crackers and juice served, almost like a first communion. And it is there in those moments that Tamara experiences some sense of community, that they would go on to relate to the foundations of their first growth into community and a community of faith. So around age 7 to adolescence is where we start to have what is called, Fowler would say, is a literal mythical stage. You know, superheroes are so important because they spell out what's good and what's bad. Very, very clear-cut thinking, very literalist thinking. At this stage, we float on the surface of things. We don't dive deeper. If somebody tells us that's, you know, Superman's a good man, we're like, okay, yeah, Superman's a good man. We don't question, like, how come all the superheroes are white? We don't do that at this age. For us at this stage in development, there is literally just right and wrong, good and bad. And the community says what and sets those standards for us. Family, our larger community, school, and, you know, the larger world. Interestingly enough, a lot of Unitarian Universalists that I've met in my lifetime believe that that we have come out of this stage and take great pride in, you know, being not a literalist. However, sometimes we tend to be trapped in this because we do literalize scripture. the understanding of world traditions and the understanding of other texts and other stories, often we become as militant as perhaps some of the literalists from Christianity and Judaism, from Hinduism and Islam, from that militant proof that what we are hearing, what we are reading is absolute truth. We do this in a way when we relate to it and negate it as untrue. It's just a different way of being stuck in this dichotomy of right or wrong, true or false. So that is kind of the foundations for us, the launching point for faith development. However, and again, Roz, thank you for your story, because in adolescence, or later on, sometimes in life for some people, again, this linear progression through chronological age isn't always right on target. The next stage, though, is when we start to question. We become skeptics. We start to question, like, why is this? Why is that? That doesn't make sense. I just learned about this and it doesn't measure up. And so it's a tough stage, though, because we begin to think outside the box. We start to realize there are other boxes. The awareness for me that there was actually, I grew up in Hilton, everyone was Christian except for this one family who were Jewish. The realization that there were people who weren't like me was a big realization for me as a child. In fact, my faith story, my launch from this early literal mythical stage to this other, more skeptical adolescent stage, has to do with a confirmation story. I was in a class, probably around 10, I was probably 11, 12 years old, confirmation class with the minister. And this was at the United Methodist Church in Hilton. And so that minister at the time started telling us what we believed. And one of the things he was telling us we were going to believe is that the only way you get to heaven is if you believe in Jesus. Well, there were probably 12 of us in the class, and I raised my hand. And I said, "What about Dr. Zoglin?" And the minister said, "What? What about Dr. Zoglin? Dr. Zoglin is not a Christian. He's Jewish. And he fixed both of my broken arms." Well, there was silence in that class at that moment, but it launched for me a question that would be my foundational story for how I had started to journey from that childhood faith towards universalism. So I ask you this morning to think for a moment, when did you first remember a disjunction in your own realization of how the world is and your relationship to it? When was, what is your faith disjunction story? It's good to acknowledge that, because this kind of disjunction is something we should continue to have throughout our lives. As I said before, this is a faith development. It's not a stagnant thing. It's not a set of beliefs that we just embrace. It's actually a becoming, and it's part of our human development. The best of who we can be comes from some of this. The same adult would then go on to say that she had another moment of disjunction that was in early adulthood. After graduating from college, same woman, Tamara, gets married in a small little church, and a minister is literal, very much the kind of evangelist that we think of when we think of a negative connotation of evangelism, marries Tamara and her new husband, and during the wedding ceremony insists that the husband, and tells everyone, including the husband and Tamara, that the husband is the head of the household, and as Christ is head of the church. 6 months later, as Tamara discovers that she's in an abusive relationship, goes back to this minister and says, "Oh my God, I'm being physically abused." And the minister says, "Well, it is your duty and your cross to bear, to stand by this man." Again, Tamara would say that moment was a launching point. This is the same person who had the Jesus loves me, a male who was kind and loving, holding a lamb and children. And here's the minister telling something totally different. It was that early faith foundation, and how the disjunction even between those two things launched Tamara out of that church office, and then out of her faith tradition, and walked, I think her account is that she basically felt like she was walking into an abyss, in walking the plank and jumping off into an unknown. To lose one's faith is to grow. For most people that have ever gone through that kind of existential angst of not knowing, not feeling connected. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to happen within a faith community. It can happen in a family. It can happen in your place in the universe. The sense of not belonging, not being grounded, is part of this faith development piece that you lose during these times. Maybe lose a spiritual connection to the structures and meaning in your life. C.S. Lewis, who explored this kind of loss in A Grief Observed when he lost his wife, mentions the tradition that St. John of the Cross brought forward way back, is the speaking of the dark night of the soul. And I think that some of what we've been going through this past year has brought some of these things up, with the witnessing what we've seen in the world, and the onslaught of having to deal with so much level of grief, so many levels of isolation, and I guess maybe just being so grieved by having thought things were better and moving forward, and have that not happen. Many people have been going through this kind of dark night of the soul piece. C.S. Lewis would mention that. And actually, one of our own, Robert Weston, minister, wrote "Cherish Your Doubts." Some of us may know from our hymnal, and remember some of the words. Cherish your doubts. Your doubt is the attendant to truth. Doubt is the key and the door to knowledge, and it is the servant of discovery. Doubt is the touchstone, and it is the acid that eats away falsehood. Well, many of us come to Unitarian Universalism because of our doubt. We come as we have fallen away from some of our previous convictions. And Fowler would point to this as the synthetic conventional stage, where we start to question everything, maybe even our own place in the universe. We start to tend to also at the same time, because it's like, oh, all these years I've been told this, and now I see it's not true. We start to question authority. And many Unitarian Universalists come to our tradition because we see it not as a set of beliefs, but because of our openness to doubt, because of our openness to not demanding a faith stance from anyone, but welcoming us in on a journey and asking those questions. Where do we come from? Where are we going? Who are we? However, sometimes we stay at this stage. We stay at this stage of not trusting, negating, that we don't tend to affirm much of anything to be true. So it's hard for us to move from this. I think sometimes because we tend to come in and question authority, that we even question the authority we grant to others. We start to question our board members. We start to question our committee chairs. We question our ministers, because we're not going to believe anything anybody's telling us. We need to just pound it out ourselves. So this idea of trusting, being able to trust at a deeper level, a more informed level, and to forge deeper sense of meaning and connection is the work of this stage, which allows us to go on to some of the other stages of development. So the idea here, though, that this level is so important. It is so important to have this breakaway moment in your life, because it is the one thing that keeps us from staying in that concrete operational mode, staying in the mistrust that allows us to forge and go forward into creating beloved community. It allows us to go forward to forge a deeper spirituality that we would find in stages Fowler has 7, that we would find in stage 5, 6, and 7. A more mature way of relating to the world and to one another. And we are mistaken if we think people need to leave their tradition and become Unitarian Universalists in order to do this, because within each faith tradition, we find elements of people in each one of these stages. And that is why Rumi remained a Sufi and in Islam. That is how Martin Luther King still stuck to his Baptist roots, and Jimmy Carter, how he was been able until recently, he did distance himself, if not leave Southern Baptist over the decision to around human sexuality. But Jimmy hung in there a long time to be a model of someone of universalism. And I kind of think my poet, Mary Oliver, might have been somebody who was able to move forward from her own moments of rejecting early childhood faith to forge what I think was a deep, natural spirituality that has very little to do with religion. These folks that move into what Fowler calls the mystical communal stage have an understanding comfort with difference. This is a very reflective stage where the idea of polar opposites can actually be held in tandem. This is the stage where people can emphasize community over their individual preferences and beliefs, where the good of the community really is paramount rather than what I need or what I want. Not that those things aren't important, but somehow they're able to transcend that and see that their own identity is linked so profoundly to what we would call the beloved community. Stage 6, conjunctive faith, is more often experienced later in life. When we begin to have, we get out of either or thinking to both and, like truth. Well, maybe we can hold both of those truths in tandem. Maybe we can think outside of these false dichotomies, to really trust that there's something more for us to embrace. And of course, the last stage for Fowler is the universalizing faith. In this, he states that few people actually reach this stage, but it is the goal that we have for Unitarian Universalism. Our universalism is grounded in faith development. Those who live their lives at this level understand that their life is in service to something greater than themselves. So they don't lament as much personal grief. They measure grief and suffering, but they seem to be able to transcend it, to keep hold of a vision that they work for and help to manifest. And again, very few people in total make it there. I think we saw elements of this with Martin Luther King. Gandhi has been lifted up. Mother Teresa, many folks have been lifted up to and seen as the example of this stage of faith development. However, we know from the life of Martin Luther King and from the life of Mother Teresa and the life of Gandhi that they were not perfect. They had their demons they struggled with as well. Richard Powers, many of you maybe been reading the Overstory, because I know I've had conversations with folks about that. And but Richard Powers, my first introduction to his writing was from a book called Generosity. And it really spoke loudly, I think, to this idea and concept of this ultimate stage of development. And interestingly enough, the main character in this book, Generosity, is a 23-year-old woman who I think is from Iran. And she's here in the US and she's in school and she perplexes all of her co-students, and she perplexes all of her professors or classmates, because she has a perspective on life that is so incredibly powerful and positive that everyone around her just feels illuminated by her presence. She treats strangers as friends. She doesn't know a stranger really. She's generous and she seems incapable of pessimism or apathy. And these folks are dumbfounded when they learn how much atrocity this woman had gone through early in life. And the question before them is, how can someone who's gone through so much hardship be filled with so much awe and wonder and love? And they want to know her secret. Persons best described by this universalizing stage generate faith compositions that create an ultimate environment. And they're inclusive of all beings. And they point the way to beloved community. And while we might find ourselves at several stages, depending on the level of conflict we're experiencing, we may resonate with one or more in our own journey. But it is Unitarian Universalism at the heart of what we are doing together is to invite us into this kind of developmental progression with our faith. We find ourselves in challenging times, and we struggle sometimes even just remain afloat, let alone diving deeper. But it's exactly in these times, I think, that we are called to dive deeper, to help forge something new, because what we have seen isn't working. together, we have been doing that. I haven't named it faith development, but part of the work that we've been doing together has been with this in mind, this idea that in January, when I spoke to you for the first, well, not the first time, but when we did our first worship service together, we talked about epiphany, how we can all have those aha moments. And I hope that you have been having aha moments. And in February, we spoke of faith development as our participation in creative interchange, how we in every moment can choose to bring about more truth, beauty, and goodness through our choice and interaction, how we speak, what we do, to bring about this vision, this universalizing beloved community in every moment that we have choice, and to be aware of how we tend to obstruct this process that Henry Nelson Wyman would call the creative event or God from flowing like a verb in our lives. We met and we had a time of coming together where a large majority of our congregants met and did the Right Relations workshop, where we talked about appreciative inquiry, how we frame, our coming from a place of gratitude towards one another and affirming what is good and what we love, and then maybe naming, and well, maybe we could build on that a little bit more in this way. Those are all ways of developing together as a people towards this common vision of a universalizing faith. To move from a culture of critique, naming what's wrong and coming at it that way, to really first honor and bless one another with gratitude. And even as we speak, I know John is with us, and Tammy and Jack are a lot of our facilitators who are getting ready to launch us off into opportunities for faith development with Soul Matters, to reinstitute that and to have a time as a community where you can have small group discussions that help you plumb to the depths of these faith stance questions that are very personal, but they're also very universal. And then, of course, we will be meeting on May 20th to forge the Social Justice Council, which is a way to put this faith into action with a single common voice as a congregation. In this time, we are all being asked to go deeper. I know my time with you has challenged me in ways to help me, I hope, forge my sense of ministry at a deeper level because of who you are and what you bring to my life. Faith development is all that we do. Unitarian Universalism is our message, and congregational life and praxis, that social action in the world community, is our curriculum for moving forward as a people of faith. May it be so, and may we walk together on this journey. Let's join together in hymn number 83. Bless you all.
Love these times, it is easy to believe in scarcity, that there will not be enough to share, and we should hold tight to what we already have. However, it is precisely in these times that the way of giving is a path forward toward community healing, restoration, and new growth and renewal. We each have much to share. For many, it is the gift of financial support to this ministry. For some, it may be time and service. Perhaps you are able to give more than your fair share. No matter your gifts, please know they are gratefully accepted. We will now receive the morning offering.
Before we extinguish our chalice, I'd like to invite those who would like to continue to explore today's topic with me in a breakout room as we continue to be together as a community following worship today. I invite you to a moment of quiet as we extinguish our chalice and read these words and carry them in our hearts until we're together again. In closing, I offer you these words by Rainier Maria Rilke. I live my life in widening circles that reach out across the world, and I may not complete this last one, but I give myself to it. I am circling around God, around that primordial tower, and I've been circling for 1,000 years, and I don't know if I am a falcon, a storm, or a great song. Bless you all.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift, which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. for all